Hi, I'm Peter Ward from Online Ceramics, and today I'm with
Stephen Parry.
in his Norfolk studio.
After I left school, I had no idea what I was going to do, as I had pretty well no qualifications. And very luckily, my parents knew a potter is an Englishman, Owen Watson, who worked in the Loire Valley in France. And they shipped me off over there. And I spent a long summer, probably 2 months, mainly splitting wood for his wood-fired kiln.
Oh, so it was wood fire then, is that?
It was wood-fired, and that's where I was introduced right at the beginning to wood firing. Extremely addictive process.
Yeah, because I always imagine red terracotta with French pots.
No, they have a tradition actually for high-fired stoneware, a tradition that goes back more than 100 years, which is kind of unusual for Europe.
Yeah.
But he really taught me to throw pots. It was my reward for splitting wood for most of the day.
Yeah.
Was to be able to get on the wheel and have Owen shouting at me and working on kind of fairly what to me was a very primitive wheel, which was a momentum wheel, which I still use.
Right, so you
a
never
version of it.
Never advanced to electric.
No, I've never used electric.
God, blimey.
So, which they're great, and there's something that once you have been working with, especially a momentum wheel, you're always working on the wheel while it's slowing down, and it might take a little bit to get used to, but once you get used to that, it's really the only way you can work.
Yeah. Have you ever used electric? Well, it must have been so different.
I've done demonstrations on electric wheels. I tend to go far too fast.
Yeah.
And the whole thing goes completely pear-shaped.
Well, it's because you start, if you're using the kick wheels, you're starting from the maximum speed, and it's only ever going to get slower.
It's only going to get slow, exactly.
Yeah.
So you're all the time making a pot, when the wheel's getting slower, which I've got completely used to and really enjoy that way of working.
Yeah. Oh, right. And so you did that for how long? A couple of years?
I went back there only for a few months in the summer, but every year for 20 years or so.
Okay. And so how long was it before you took up your own practice in this country, and how did that happen?
All right, well, that's an interesting question. I was quite young. When I first went there, I think I was 16 or 17, and I visited quite a few potters in England and thought that it was far too much for a young person to start a pottery. All the the whole equipment and getting a place and all that. So I went through quite a long period of not making pots. I was working in a photography studio and picture framing studio, various other things. And then I decided that really what I wanted to do was ceramics. So I went to, I applied to go to a ceramics college, Croydon College, and did a 3-year ceramics course, which straight afterwards, I wrote to a lot of potters asking if they'd employ me, and they all said no. But I heard, I was very lucky, we were visited by Mick Casson, and he said, did you know there was a place called Dartington Pottery training workshop in Devon? You ought to go there. So I applied to go there, and luckily Mick Casson was on the interview panel, and he answered all the questions they asked me. So I didn't have to say a word.
Yeah.
And I went there for 2 years, and that was really a fantastic place.
What year was that then?
It was in the mid to late 70s.
Oh, okay.
But you really we were making work for shops, galleries, so you really learnt how to run a pottery.
Yeah.
Unfortunately it isn't there anymore.
But it must have been a great place, because I visited it. I used to go there with John Pollux.
Oh right, yeah.
When I was a kid,
yeah.
so I was. We're talking 1981, so it was after you.
Right.
But Tim Andrews was.
He was there after me. Yeah, I was one of the first students to. I think I came in the second year that it was running.
Yeah.
It was the directors of it was, well, the person in charge of it was a potter called Peter Starkey, a salt glaze potter, and then it had various directors, and one of them was David Leach, another one Marion de Trey, and I can't remember who else.
But none of those.
Mick Casson.
Oh, Mick Casson was, but the others weren't. None of them were really wood firers, though. So you did the wood firing.
Darting to pottery, we made reduction stonework.
Yeah.
And decorated. It wasn't really my type of thing.
Well, it was functional, wasn't it?
It was functional reduction stoneware, but we had what we called fifth week. So every fifth week, we could take a week off making our own work, and there was a wood-fired kiln and a salt glaze kiln, so we could use those kilns, and I obviously used this wood-fired kiln a lot.
I suppose it was an education establishment, because that's where the Steiner School was, and Dartington Art College.
There was an interesting place to be. There was a lot going on. But we were I'm going to say forced to allow the public in once a month or something, which was a bit discouraging. Suddenly you'd look round and you'd have sort of 80 tourists looking at what you were doing. But really it was a fan. We worked very, very hard. I think we got paid £20 a week, and we worked from 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock at night. I mean, it was hard work.
Yeah. And how long were you there for? So
2 years.
2 years.
I was there officially for 1 year, and then they needed someone to continue the work, because it took on students, and instead of getting them, it taught them how to make a mug, a simple mug or a bowl to begin with. As soon as they got good at it, you moved them on to something else. Yeah. They really needed a thrower who could continue making pots which were good enough to put into the shops. Yeah. So I worked there for an extra year. I moved to London for which was meant to be for a short amount of time, and got a job as a technician at Camberwell College, and had a place where I could make my own work in a very small scale. And quite quickly I became what they called a visiting lecturer at Camberwell, teaching people to throw and build kilns, which I really enjoyed. That was very part-time, so that enabled me to look around the country and look for somewhere to set up my own place. So while I was working there, I sort of drew a kind of 100-mile radius around London, and ended up in North Norfolk, which was a bit more than 100 miles.
I was going to say that's...
It was a little bit more, but it was, in those days, it was very cheap. There were lots of derelict houses and falling down barns and things. Yeah. And I ended up buying a property, which I thought I'd restore in a couple of months, and it took me 2 years.
and that's what brought you here then?
Exactly, yeah.
And how did you, so you stuck with stoneware, you stuck with wood firing, how did you develop this? Because what I like about your pots, I would probably insult him now, is that sort of fluidity of the outside, you know, it's sort of almost looks semi-liquid, you know, the way you decorate in. But is it slip you add on?
It is slip, yeah.
So how did you come up with that sort of... Well, because it's very recognisably yours.
I've probably, like quite a lot of potters that throw, the pots look fantastic when they're wet on the wheel. And every process after that, they kind of they start looking less and less lively. Yeah. So I decided to work in a way where I could bring back that life that they've got on a wheel by using very wet slips on the outside, just applied with my hands on the outside of the pot. And then also I was and had been before very interested in using wood ash glazes, which are very fluid. And I felt that these two things together actually brought back that life, which kind of, if you make ceramics, they go through a sort of when they're dry clay and then biscuit fired pots, they really start looking
Yeah.
unlively.
Yeah. Yeah. They
So
can be.
the challenge was to bring back the life into the pot that I saw when it was on the wheel.
So the wood firing in itself would help with that as well.
That's the
'Cause
next. That's the next thing, is that the wood firing. I mean, the process is very important to me.
Yeah.
So I feel that everything I do right from the start, I mix my own clay and use very slow kick wheel, and then I wood fire, and when I put the pots in the kiln to fire, there's a lot of decisions to make of which side of the pot should face the flame, and whether you fire it on the side or stack pots on top of each other. And then the firing is another process which you have decisions of what type of wood you use and how thick it is and how much air you let into the kiln while you're firing it. And hopefully at the end of it, the pots tell that story. And that is kind of what I'm trying to achieve.
You also have those little blue, is it paws on them as well, that quite often you have,
Yeah, it's all quite, it's a hard thing to explain, but the way I work with fluid glazes and wood firing, you put a lot of planning into it and thought into it, and yet you're allowing the glazes and the flame of the kiln to actually do something which you don't have control over.
Yeah.
Which is sometimes, you open a kiln, I think a lot of people who work like me go through the same thing. You open the kiln, and because there might be 6 months since you made the pot, you've pictured what these pots, you want these pots to look like.
Yeah.
You open the kiln and they don't look anything like you've pictured it, and you go through a sort of weeks of slight depression. But after that you realise that that's why I do it.
Yeah.
Because those pots are better than I imagined. Really, it's just that they weren't what I imagined, and because I didn't have complete control over it.
Yeah. But there is a lot of control. I think it's because your kilns. All the potters I know who do sort of firing or wood firing know the hot spots. They know where it affects.
Yeah.
So you do know a bit of it, don't you?
There is a lot of planning.
Yeah.
But quite often people described it as planned accidents.
Yeah.
That it still, that method of working is going to give you something which you can't imagine.
Yeah. All right. That's really. And you mentioned. Sorry, I'm going back now. You said you mix your own clay. Where do you actually get the clay from?
Well,
is it not? It's not digging out of the ground, is it?
No, I don't dig my own clay. No. I have tried, but no, I don't. I make high-fired ceramics. You don't have high-firing clay in Norfolk. I buy my clay, which comes from, but it really, most of it comes from Cornwall and Devon, and I buy it in dry powder and shredded form, which is sort of lumps. Oh. And then I can blend different clays together. Yeah. And mix in a variety of different grogs.
But that's a lot of work.
And it is a lot of work, but it gives me exactly the clay I want, and I can have different mixes depending on what type of, if I'm hand building pots or throwing pots, I can mix a clay body which suits the way I work. So
it's a bit like how you reclaim clay. You put it onto bats, do you, on plasterboard bats?
No, I use something which is actually an old-fashioned bread maker's dough mixer. Okay. Which is a great big bowl with an arm that rotates and the bowl rotates. And I pour powdered clay in there and grog and any mixture I want to do. Yeah. Add water, turn it on, leave it for about an hour. It makes the most awful clay. Yeah. But I make it at least 6 months before I need to use it. So I store it for 6 months and it turns into something fantastic.
Oh, brilliant. But because you're talking about small amounts, and actually your pots can be bloody big. So
This will make a lot of clay. One day I can mix a ton of clay.
okay.
And I keep as I said, I keep ahead of myself. So the clay has at least, well, a minimum of 3 months, but better 6 months before I use it.
I didn't realise it matured like wine.
It does, yeah, it does. The process of powdering clay slightly wrecks the alignment of the particles of clay, and the longer you leave it, it is actually sort of like making yogurt or something. Each mix, you put some of your old clay into it, the stuff that you've turned off the pot or pots that you've thrown away. You put those in a bucket, and you put those into the new mix, and it helps to speed up that maturing process.
All right, a bit like sourdough.
Yeah, similar thing, and I do it in a dough mixer. So, yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
So, I mean, that's kind of the beginning of the process. You know, this is the story that I want my pots to show people.